the inaugural episode of In Search of True North.
How does it feel?
Terrifying.
Terrifying?
Yeah.
This is the first time I've done anything like this, so I'm feeling pretty good, but pretty nervous. Hopefully my wife can't hear me. I don't want to get too embarrassed, but so first topic.
So I don't know if you knew about this, but there was an election.
I think I've heard something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice corny joke to open. I like it, Cody. But yeah, there was an election, and what was the date that the election actually happened?
It was the 3rd. It was over a week ago now.
Yeah. And now it's November 12th, and we're still not decided. In my mind, we're still not decided on who the actual president is, but the media has sure called it. So
yeah, I'm wrapping my head around that. How the media is telling people Biden won. He obviously won. Trump is just being a brat. Like any legitimate legal headway Trump makes, if he does find that there were issues with mail-in ballots, I mean, really, regardless of whether there was intentional fraud, having such an unprecedented amount of mail-in ballots with an election this close. Now, like granted, like Biden's won a lot of electoral votes. However, at the state level, a lot of those states were very close. So given how strange, how unprecedented so many aspects of this election are, I don't think it's crazy for him to want a closer look and to want recounts in some states. And yeah, it's almost I think it's really suspicious that the media just has no interest in this whatsoever, and the Democrats have no interest in it whatsoever. It's just, well, we won, get over it. Now unify.
yeah, I think it's so interesting how now that the Democratic candidate has won, they're basically like, okay, yeah, let's unify now.
Yeah.
Where's the unification under Trump? I mean, to me, you should be trying to unify in the face of adversity. And what it seems like is that the unification can now start now that we have a president that we like. And it wouldn't be unheard of if the Republicans, I mean, from what I've seen, Republicans are just like, no, we were given the chance to unify under our previous candidate or under any previous candidate, really. And, you wanted no part of it for the last 4 years. So
yeah, they impeached him over an evidence-free conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious to me that I don't know. It's so funny that like leading up to the election, it was, oh yeah, there's election interference, and this time they expanded the cast of bad actors. This time they were talking about Iran as well. It wasn't just Russia. They were priming us for all of the excuses they were going to use to invalidate the election in the media if Trump won. And now he's won, and it's now that he's questioning the legitimacy of the election, they're saying, how dare he disgrace our democracy?
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around. And what I always struggle with is how, I don't consider myself on either side of this, really. Like, I don't, Democrat or Republican. I don't like Trump. I don't like Biden. And I feel like so many people are in that situation, but all you see from media outlets is the one side, right? Like,
Yeah.
Everyone against Trump. And it just continues to boggle my mind. Like, for the past 4 years, all this guy is doing essentially is sending mean tweets. and just, it seems to be, or the way he portrays it, even Trump portrays it as him against the world. And oftentimes it really seems that way.
I think he feeds off of it too, and I think it makes his base more rabid in their support of him.
Yeah.
Because everybody loves a good martyr story, and it's so easy. If you like Trump, it's so easy to look at it as, he's trying to save the country, but everyone's basically character assassinating him.
Yeah. And it's only attacking his character. And you could attack things that he's done. Like he's continued all the major wars that we got into. He's done nothing.
To his credit, he did say that he was going to reduce. He publicly announced that he was going to reduce troop counts in Afghanistan to the lowest level since 2001, which would have kind of de facto ended the war. But I think it was the Defense Committee in the House blocked his ability to do so, because basically he would need them to approve the funding to bring them back, and they said they wouldn't give him any money to bring the troops home. And that's in the Democratic-controlled House, saying, no, I think 18 years, that's too soon to end this. And it's not even a war. It's not even a fucking war. Technically, like Congress never declared it a war. And they're just like, it was so funny. Glenn Greenwald did a great episode of System Update about it, where he showed the video footage of that vote. And one representative after another they were all getting in these talking points about, I'd like to end this war just as much as the next person, but it has to be done the right way. We can't leave too soon. And it's like, dude, it's been 18 years. Well, 19. It's been 19 fucking years.
Yeah, and of most. Oh.
Yeah, I wrote this on purpose.
Yeah. And we seemingly went nowhere. I mean, you could see pretty early on that it was, unjust, and it wasn't going anywhere. We never found anything that we were supposed to find, weapons of mass destruction wise.
That's Iraq.
Excuse me, I'm getting my wars mixed up.
It's easy to.
Yeah, but I do think it's interesting if you go back to Obama's campaign, how he basically campaigned. One of his huge campaigning points was bringing all our troops home. And not only did he not, he may have relocated them, but he certainly didn't bring them home.
I think, if I understand it correctly, I think the thing that Obama's credited for, depending on your perspective, whether this is something you should be condemned or credited for, the pivot was, well, I'm not going to stop bombing the shit out of all these poor people in the Middle East, but I'm going to put fewer American lives in harm's way. So he continued the bombing campaigns, but he pivoted towards doing it a lot more, fewer boots on the ground, more just bombing campaigns, more drone strikes and stuff like that.
Utilizing the technology at hand is what he ended up doing. Yeah. So circling back to Trump, though, that's one of his. They could have attacked him for so many things that he's done, and instead they just chose to attack his character. And
I don't think most people even know the worst things that he's done, which is weird because, like, I'm used to the fact. Yeah. I'm used to the fact that most people don't know the worst things that Obama did. Because the most of people in the media have kind of made him a saint. But the fact that most people don't even know the worst shit Trump has done is baffling. Like they'll talk about immigration policy or something like that, and it's like actually
that's one
whether through incompetence or through like whatever it was, like deportations went down dramatically under Trump. So, and like they'll talk about like. The racist comments or whatever, and like Biden's track record as a senator is, I would say, demonstrably more racist than anything Trump has said.
Yeah, it's crazy. And Trump's deportation. If you recall that video, I think you probably sent me, but it was basically saying that these border patrol. Police forces, border patrol forces, basically wouldn't work with Trump because of who he was.
I think it was the local law enforcement and some of those border areas refused to cooperate with ICE.
Yeah.
Because Trump kind of alerted them to not just Trump, but the way the media was responding to it. It made them realize like, oh, hey, this is kind of messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. I just for sure.
But when it's Uncle Barry, hey, no, kids, no, yeah, this is gonna be great. He built a house for you. There's concrete floors and chain link fences, and we're gonna separate you from your families.
Yeah, and the media coverage of that, while my involvement in politics was very minimal at that point, the media coverage, I believe, was even less or more minimal. Even if I was into politics at the time, I think it would have been hard pressed for me to find good, reliable information on what the Obama administration was actually doing.
Yeah, most people didn't know about it. I at the time that stuff was, well, I mean, I have to remind myself that it was 8 fucking years. But
Yeah.
are we pro cursing or lax about cursing or anti cursing? We didn't discuss that. Reed made a
we'll take the Joe Rogan approach.
yeah.
We'll go with cursing. Yeah.
But yeah, towards the last, I think 2 or 3 years of Obama's presidency, I actually had the privilege of, like, I got to know a handful of immigrants. I won't comment on the legality of their immigration status, but they were immigrants, and it was really interesting because when I forget, I don't know if there was a name to the legislation or what it was, but Obama made this big deal saying, fuck, I want to look it up, but he said something to the effect of, if you're here illegally, just come, well, my hand disappeared for a second. Come tell us who you are, and, nothing bad's going to happen. Like, and it was like this honeypot trying to get these immigrants to think that if they just registered officially, so that we at least had them on the books and had an idea of, what that segment of the population is in size, then there might be a pathway to citizenship, or at least to temporary legal residence. And it was so interesting to me because I didn't really know what to make of it. I was like 23, 24 when it happened. And I asked my best friend at the time, who was an immigrant from Mexico. I was like, "Hey, what do you think of that?" And he said that he thought it was BS. He was like, "No, they just want us to come and not him, but other illegal immigrants, not." They want illegal immigrants to come and voluntarily self-identify, and then they're just going to kick us all out. And it's interesting. It's interesting in hindsight the way the media covered that, like it was this great move towards amnesty that Obama was pushing. Knowing now that Obama was deporting far greater numbers of immigrants than Trump has, and putting children in ICE detention facilities and gassing immigrants at the border, like, it does seem really duplicitous. It does seem kind of like it was a honeypot. But the media celebrated it, like, oh, he's how progressive, how forward thinking.
Yeah. If the government is offering you something or telling you to do something, and you are quote unquote in the wrong, as in if you say you're an illegal immigrant and the government says, "Oh yeah, come tell us you're illegal and we'll help you gain status," that means they're going to deport you. In case you didn't know. So if anyone watching this, if they tell you that under Biden's administration, please don't do it.
Yeah.
Because that's not how it's going to end up for you. And same thing with guns. If the government is offering you compensation for your guns, don't give them your guns, especially if you don't want to. And if it's something you're trying to get rid of, whatever, you're probably going to get rid of them anyway. But, it's like any other government program where you can probably find other ways to get rid of your stuff. And there's other ways to become a legal citizen that doesn't require you just blatantly telling our government that you're illegal and in our country. So
yeah, I wonder how that policy is going to shift under Biden. My take on it is that it's just going to be business as usual. The federal government will probably keep deporting a few 100,000 immigrants per year. They'll probably keep building a physical barrier along the border, because that wasn't even like a new initiative under Trump. Like there were large sections of the border that already had physical barriers. He just got funding to build physical barriers along more of the border. So
Yeah.
I think that'll probably change very little.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think a lot of stuff is going to be business as usual, and
Nothing will fundamentally change.
yeah. I mean,
That's the quote.
the corruption will remain the same. The policies will relatively stay the same. I mean, if you look at Obama to Trump, or even go back further, like go back to Bush to Obama to Trump to now Biden, like nothing fundamentally changes. Like it's all along the same lines. We're still not seeing progress in areas that we need progress in, and it's being hindered by most corruption, but the two-party system and the corruption within that two-party system is basically what's keeping us from progressing. And
I think, yeah, it's weird. I think the two-party system is the two-party system that we have in America is far worse than a one-party system would be.
what would you consider a one-party system?
I mean, if
Like how similar to how England, it's like an all or none kind of thing.
I'm not really familiar with how England does it, but what I mean is, if we had an outright one-party dictatorship where there was no illusion, there was no theater, it was just, hey, we're having an election, and this is the one guy you get to vote for. I think that would be better because I think that it would be easier to mobilize resistance against the regime. Where what we have, it's a de facto single regime masquerading as a two-party system, and they've so effectively kind of hijacked the minds of the people, where even though policy changes so very little from one president to another, regardless of their party affiliation, and even though there's so many times where you kind of see behind the veil, and you see that this is all a game. Like my favorite moment of that keeps bouncing through my head over the last couple of weeks was seeing that video from 2006 when Nancy Pelosi, I think it was like a 60 Minutes interview or something, and she was, there were Democrats in Congress at the time who were talking about how we really need to impeach Bush because he lied us into a war that cost us $2 trillion and led to the deaths of 100,000 Iraqi civilians. And he also approved a torture program in America, even against a few American citizens. And she said, impeachment's off the table. What good would that do at this point? And she said it was punishment. She said she wanted to focus on the midterm elections, and she said it was punishment enough to Bush if she could condemn him to a lame duck presidency. Like that's a moment. That's a moment where you see behind the veil and you realize, like, this probably more than anything else that's happened in our lifetime was like one of the most obviously impeachable offenses by any president. And she was just like, what good would it do now?
Yeah.
Because they're fucking buddies. And she was in all of the CIA briefings to Congress where they actually explained, these are all the torture, the different torture strategies that we have. Oh, but don't call them torture. They're enhanced interrogation techniques. She was a part of all of it. And she knew that Iraq was that the weapons of mass destruction thing was a big lie. Yeah. I don't know. I forget where we were at before. I
bit of a tangent, but yeah, and it's what I kind of wrestle with in my mind is how do we get to the point where people sort of realize that we're all getting screwed? Like, it's like when you watch these news outlets, you watch CNN, you watch MSNBC, which I highly encourage you not to watch or listen to. but all they do is try to divide by the two parties. They use the two-party system to, appeal to one side or the other, and people eat it up. And that's what still kind of blows my mind, is that people eat this stuff up. And if you told someone on the left that we need to, forget about the news and stuff, they would start shitting on Donald Trump. If you tell the right, they would start praising Donald Trump. So it's like, he's unintentionally, I think, a very, very divisive person, or intentionally. I'm still not sure.
I think he's intentionally provocative, which tends to be divisive. Whether he's doing so for kind of nefarious establishment reasons, I think he's far smarter than most people on the left want to give him credit for. I think that there's a lot of calculation and the sort of theatrical, the role of the theatrical provocateur that he plays. But yeah, whether he's knowingly participating in the division and the sort of I don't know, the false reality that the two sides are living in. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's something we've struggled with, right, in the past several years. I mean, I personally haven't spent 4 years beating myself up or anything like that over his presidency. It's mostly been in the past year or two, mostly since they started with the Democratic nomination and the whole election cycle. And it's something that I just still can't quite figure out, is what, besides his mean tweets. I mean, that's it. I mean, everything else is business as usual. His verbiage and his rhetoric is off-putting, for sure. I mean, I'll give anyone that if his leadership qualities are not quite there.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. I mean, he's not, but if you took away the tweets, he wouldn't be that bad. I mean, let's be honest. I don't want to sit here and make excuses for the guy, but it's really the tweets. It's the tweets. It's the mean tweets,
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a similar boat as you. I kind of disengaged from politics and the news media for a while. And only started enthusiastically re-engaging once I started to find voices that I trusted weren't bullshitting me. Namely, for all of the 5 people who are going to listen to this, Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald, The Gray Zone, scattered other sources. Aaron Mate Mate.
Gray Zone, right?
Yeah, I think it's Mate. Yeah. Yep. He's a contributor to the Gray Zone as well as The Nation, surprisingly.
Okay, I'm not familiar with The Nation, to be honest.
And Rising, with Crystal and Sagar, from The Hill. They're pretty good. The Hill. Yeah. So once I started finding all these sources where I was like, oh, hey, these people are smart, and they all have their different political ideas, but I trust that they're being honest and philosophically consistent. And so I started paying more attention just in kind of the last, 6 months or so, maybe a year, kind of like you. So I'm not an expert on everything Trump has done. I've been learning more and more since you and I have been preparing for this podcast. But from what I've seen, I think the only things that are substantially different in policy, as far as I can tell, it seems like he's been much more economically protectionist, much more critical of free trade agreements. And he's been slower to use the military in conflicts around the world. I think if Hillary were president, I think that we would have seen more wars. And that's not to say that Trump has been anti-war. I mean, he did engage in a bombing campaign in Syria over the false flag gas attacks in 2018.
Yeah,
and he did levy really, really harsh sanctions against Iran and Venezuela in the middle of a pandemic. So I wouldn't say that he's been a dove, and he's been saber rattling with China as well, and is overseeing a multi-billion-dollar arms sale to Taiwan, which regardless of whether we should ideologically or philosophically support Taiwan's independence, selling multi-billion dollars worth of military equipment to them is definitely like an escalation of tensions with China. So, but I think you and I have talked about this before. He's escalated tensions and used the military to a lesser degree than Obama did, and to a lesser degree than Hillary would have, and I think almost like most definitely to a lesser degree than Biden will, if Biden successfully takes the presidency. And then other than that, I think the only major policy difference is he ended a few treaties. He pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, and he pulled out of the Paris Accords, I think.
Very recent, right? Paris climate agreement.
Yeah. But other than that, like his presidency, his policies have not been that different than previous presidents.
Yeah. He for sure has pulled out of more than just those two. He's very much he's very much like an American exceptionalist, right? Like he tries to prop up America, like the beacon on the hill kind of the old days that they used to call America. And are we though? Are we a beacon on the hill? Not so much anymore. We can't even provide healthcare for our citizens. So in that sense, I kind of disagree with them. But some of these things, as far as, were we getting a raw deal out of being in, did he pull out of the UN? I could be making that up.
He did not pull out of the UN. He ended the free trade agreements. That's what I was alluding to with my first point. Like I don't know the extent of it, but I think he pulled out of NAFTA, or where Obama was pushing for more free trade agreements. Most infamously, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which incidentally would have given transnational corporations the right to sue sovereign governments for profits that they lose or miss out on due to new environmental regulations. So if you decide you don't want this fucking manufacturer to keep dumping toxic sludge in your country, and you pass new regulations that make business more expensive for them, the TPP would have established it as national. Well, I don't know how it works, whether it would be national law or whatever, but at least would have been law in the United States that they could legally sue those countries for those lost profits. But yeah, where Obama was very, very pro expanding free trade agreements, presumably at the behest of the corporate oligarchs, Trump has been much more of an economic protectionist, I would say, with the tariff war with China and pulling out of free trade agreements and not pushing really any new ones, as far as I know.
Yeah, and I think, like a lot of things, I can see both sides of it, especially this one. Like you can see where more of a global economy would be a fantastic thing, right? But I think we've mentioned this before, where if you are in so many conflict, like when you have so many wars within, with other countries, and then are also in trade agreements with other countries and in treaties with other countries, it creates a very large shitstorm.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is exactly what Trump had in mind, but establishing basic quote unquote world peace before entering these trade agreements and these peace treaties and everything else, establishing peace within other countries and with other countries would be so much better, stabilizing those treaties down the road, if that makes sense. Basically, get out of all your wars before you establish globalization and global trade, basically.
Yeah.
And I think we jumped into, I mean, we've always been warmongers, but, we jumped into all these free trade agreements with these other countries, decades ago. And now we're kind of intertwined with both. And it just creates an interesting dynamic globally. And I wonder what Trump had in mind with that. Like, did he kind of have that in mind? Like, hey, we need to establish world peace basically before we do this. Or did he just do it because it's Donald Trump,
I don't think that he was that worried about world peace. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say because he doesn't seem like
right.
the most intellectually consistent person or philosophically consistent. On one hand, he said things about how we shouldn't be fighting all these useless foreign wars. But then on the other hand, under his presidency, there have been failed coup d'etats against Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. The war in Syria continued, and that was basically just to block a Russian pipeline. I think he's not like Ron Paul. He's not Ron Paul. He's not Tulsi Gabbard. He's not an idealist who has this grand vision for peace before we can all, play nice together and trade as partners and or competitors. I think he's less. I don't know. He's the same ilk as the rest of them, but he's like a little bit more sensible, a little bit less hawkish, and yeah, I don't know how to put a bow on that thought.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, because it is very interesting what he did. He seemingly did good things on that front, but then again, you don't know if they're gonna have good outcomes.
It's so hard to say too because our economy was fucked. There was nothing he could do about it. I mean, he could have helped stop the bleeding, but I don't think that he. I don't know. The way that we got into the 2008 market crash was by basically reckless fiscal policy I always get fiscal and monetary policy confused, which one's which. And I've heard people be sticklers like, oh, the Fed does one and the Treasury does the other, but fucking whatever. The Federal Reserve under Alan Greenspan kept interest rates around like 2%, which is well below rates that they would ever be in the marketplace. And that is basically an inflationary monetary policy. And that was designed to get us out of the dot-com bubble bursting. And so that was a big part of what inflated the real estate bubble that led to the 2008 crash. Rather than learning from our mistakes, the conclusion that Ben Bernanke and then later Janet Yellen, the conclusion that they came to was that what we needed to do was more of what Alan Greenspan did. And so, they pulled interest rates down to zero, and we had 3 rounds of quantitative easing, which is just money printing. So I really don't think, if you just look at the fundamentals of the economy and all the companies that helped get us into the crash too through their mismanagement of their own assets and their corruption, the government bailed them out. So I think we've been heading towards economic disaster for a long time. I don't think so. Whether or not Trump was this true blue idealist who really believed in his economic populism that he campaigned on in 2016, I don't know. But I don't think even if he was, that there was a whole lot that anybody could do. I think we pretty well dug our grave.
Yeah, for sure. We could probably talk about Donald Trump for several days, for being honest. So I do want to pivot to the election.
Yeah.
Actual road to
I'm a little
270.
sleepy brain, so I'm trusting you to be the one who like organizes the talk a bit.
I got you. Yeah. No, I mean, I can stay on the Donald Trump topic forever, but in conclusion, I'm still incredulous at the extreme hate. Um,
That I
within his
absolutely
way.
don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand disliking him and wanting to vote a new president in. Absolutely. Um, and that's kind of a good segue to Biden, who is allegedly the president-elect, but who
Unify.
actually, yeah, who actually knows. And I'll be honest, I was very wrong when we were talking about the election prior to it. I definitely was under the impression that Trump would win by a large margin, which was obviously very wrong given the current state of the results. And
Yeah,
I think
you were kind of banking on like the silent Trump supporters, right?
that was my big thing, and that was a lot of people's. Uh, well, I wouldn't say a lot of people's big thing, but I kind of was under the impression that there are a massive amount of people that are afraid to voice their opinions, and all those opinions were going to Trump. And I think I underestimated how the system works. And so let me explain that a little bit. So, in looking more of it after the election, you can see that if you look at a congressional district map, you can see basically Biden won all major cities. Like I can't even think of one off the top of my head that a major city wise that Trump would have won. And by major city, I mean New York, Chicago, LA. Those are three biggest ones, obviously. I was researching
He should have built
Wisconsin.
more hotels. He fucked up.
I think that might have contributed to his downfall a little bit, um, but yeah, and it's so interesting that in those cities, such as Illinois, I haven't done the math on this. There's a lot of red in Illinois. And, if you've driven through Illinois, it's a lot of rural areas and then Chicago. And pretty much in that state, there were a few other blue congressional districts, but the big one is obviously Chicago. And that won Biden the whole state, in the all or none system of the Electoral College. He gets all, I think there's 20 in Illinois, if I'm not mistaken, 20 electoral votes, and you get all of them if you win if you win the state. So I think that's where I went extremely wrong. Is that I knew that Trump would get like a lot of land cover. Like if you looked at a map, you would see a ton of red, like congressional district wise. But I didn't take into account that these large cities are voting all Trump. I mean,
What's interesting though is that happens in almost every single election, and he won last time.
yeah.
So, what's different? Is it just there was larger turnout, or was there fraud? I don't know. It's so the thing that's really peculiar to me is we were told that there would be this massive blue wave, that the Dems were going to storm Congress, and that they'd be able to pass anything from their agenda, which is funny because it's always the same agenda. But
Yeah. Exactly.
the yeah, they didn't take the Senate. They lost seats in the House. So on the majority of the country voted Republican. And maybe that has to do with how districting works out, and maybe gerrymandering and all that shit. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but it just, on the face of it, it's so strange that the country overwhelmingly would have voted for a Republican-controlled, a Republican-controlled Senate and a less Democratic-controlled House, but then vote for a Democratic president. That seems really weird to me.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I watched a Jimmy Dore video on that actually, and he basically was explaining like why, how did Biden get so many votes, but then there was no blue wave like you just mentioned. And so that does bring up the question of fraud. I wanted to try to keep it fairly in the realm of assuming it's a fair election until the end.
Yeah, that's fair. I
But
don't have a strong
obviously,
feeling about it either way.
yeah, but obviously it comes up because it's just suspicious, and it's more suspicious that it's automatically dismissed by the media. If you look at all these things where, all the Biden scandals that came up during his
What
campaign.
Biden scandals?
Right, exactly.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, mostly to do with his family, which I thought was interesting. Not a lot to do with actually Biden. Trump could have brought up the 94 crime bill. Um, you know, that's the biggest one I can think of. But, he could have brought up things that Biden has done in his 47.
1988 presidential campaign.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that. But
Yeah. When everyone talks about him being a pathological liar and a plagiarist, most of the footage that they use is from his 1988 presidential campaign.
I have seen some footage of that. I guess I wasn't aware at the time that it was for president.
You should check it out. He gave a press conference after the media really came down hard on him for both of those things, just outright lying about his academic record and plagiarizing two other politicians, one of whom was Robert Kennedy. And yeah, he held a press conference and he was like, "Ladies and gentlemen, I've been dumb and I'll be dumb again."
Oh my God. This guy, we potentially have just voted him as the next president, and
he's not gonna be. I mean, he's gonna be like less than 2 years. There's no way they'll. I would say
less than 2 years.
Probably less than 1 year.
It depends how ambitious Kamala is. I saw today. Did I say her name right? I want to make sure I say it right.
Kamala.
Someone got in trouble for not saying it right. I think it was Tucker Carlson got in trouble because he didn't say it right. But
if he was on MSNBC, nobody would care.
Yeah. It depends how ambitious she is, because if I saw something today, I'm not sure the legitimacy of this, but basically if she becomes president after 2 years, so she would have less than 2 years in her current presidency term, she would then be able to get reelected twice. So she would be able to have 2 4-year terms after that, so 10 years total.
Oh, whoa.
I don't know if that's true. That should warrant a Google search, just to see if that is legitimate. Yeah, I can go on about this, actually. But yeah, so, and her ambition is concerning. I mean, she has basically upheld a lot of stuff that Biden has put forward in the 90s, with his crime bill that disproportionately affected Black people.
Wait, as a matter of, it drives me crazy because I just read that Radley Balko, I'm just going to plug it shamelessly for our 5 listeners. Radley Balko wrote this amazing book called Rise of the Warrior Cop, which is all about how basically since the 1965 LA riots, the police in America have become increasingly militarized and used to terrorize the citizenry. Mostly in the name of the drug war. And from Reagan's first term through Obama's first term, the one legislator who was mentioned most often as, Biden was advocating for this, or Biden wrote this piece of legislation that did this awful thing that enhanced the police's ability to trample on the rights of the citizenry. It was Biden over and over again. I started highlighting it. If I recall correctly, he wrote 5 major pieces of drug war legislation, including the 94 crime bill, between Reagan's first term and 2000. And then in the 2000s, he was fear mongering about how awful ecstasy was and how we need police to go in and raid these awful secret dance parties the kids are having called raves. And everyone always says the 94 crime bill, but there's so much more than that. And Yeah, like his whole career has been fear mongering about the vices of the citizenry and how we need tougher policies, how we need to empower the police to crack down on all of us because we're bad people. But sorry, continue.
Yeah, I think what I was going for was that Kamala kind of upholds the same values, I guess if you want to call them bad values, but values nonetheless, where she has done things, and who was she the DA for? Which
I think it was San Francisco. It might have been for all of California. Let me check. We don't have to memorize things in the age of Google, which is wonderful, but also awful.
Yeah, exactly. I wish I was a little more prepared, or just more knowledgeable. Either or, but
I think we'll get better as we go.
Yeah, I mean the 5 listeners, I don't think they'll.
We're setting people's expectations low so that like later on when we're mediocre, people will be like, "Wow, they've really gotten better." All right, so in 2003, this is per Wikipedia, which I'm not convinced is not an extension of the intelligence complex, but for whatever it's worth, these are pretty straightforward facts. I don't think they're gonna. This should be pretty reliable. In 2003, she was elected District Attorney of San Francisco. She was elected Attorney General of California in 2010, and that's where her self-proclaimed, where she gets off proclaiming herself to be California's top cop. And she was reelected as Attorney General of California in 2014. She served as a junior United States Senator from California since 2017.
Okay. Yeah. And that's so interesting. I think cracking down on crime is like just one of those things, right? We should have a whole segment on this, to be honest. I'm only going
absolutely
too big of a rabbit hole here.
I would insist that you read that book before we do it.
Okay. Yeah. I should do that for sure. All the books that you've gotten, just ship them to me.
Cassandra's going crazy. She's like, "You've only read one. You don't need to buy 10 more."
I get like that too. But it's so interesting, the type of crimes. That's where it gets me, and that's where I wish people would just dig a level deeper. I've seen so many people who are like, I don't want to vote for Biden, but we just need to get rid of Trump. And it's like, well, do you though? I mean, if you dig a level deeper and you look at these things that Biden, and I'm specifically mentioning Kamala Harris here, is that she cracked down on crimes that like you're giving sentences to these minority communities. I mean, let's be honest.
And, yeah.
And they're giving them massive sentences for like an ounce of pot, and it's like the punishment does not fit the crime in so many of these cases, and it's like, being tough on crime as in murder or human trafficking or so many other egregious crimes makes so much sense.
However, sorry, continue.
Yeah, non-violent prisoners, she fought so hard to get them imprisoned. And
I heard Jimmy mention that she defied a court ruling. I never knew that it was a Supreme Court ruling requiring that the state reduce its prison population, and they almost found the state in contempt of court. Working in tandem with Governor Jerry Brown, Harris and her legal team filed motions that were condemned by judges and legal experts as obstructionist, bad faith, and nonsensical, at one point even suggesting that the Supreme Court lacked the jurisdiction to order a reduction in California's prison population.
Did she win on that?
I don't know. This is one of the most interesting allegations against her, and I haven't looked it up, which I'm a little embarrassed to say. Okay. This extreme resistance to a Supreme Court ruling was done to prevent the release of fewer than 5,000 nonviolent offenders whom multiple courts had cleared as presenting next to no risk of recidivism or threat to public safety. despite a straightforward directive from the Supreme Court to identify prisoners for release over a two-year period. The state spent the majority of that period seesawing back and forth between dubious legal filings and flagrant disregard. By early 2013, it became clear that the state had no intention to comply. While Harris's ultimately unsuccessful presidential campaign saw questions raised about her criminalization of truancy and her tough-on-crime reputation during her time as San Francisco's DA, her role in California's prison reduction case largely flew under the radar, though it was decried at the time. This is so fucking interesting, and I'm
What are you on? What site?
it's prospect.org. I've never heard of it before.
Okay. Yeah, I want to
Um,
make sure that, especially with the articles that we look up, I think it's important that we
yeah, that's fair.
show. No, prospect.org is probably fine, but like,
It might not be. I don't know.
okay, but like, this stuff is on mainstream MSM, as we call it, but mainstream media sites. I mean, you can
Yeah.
get. It's just a matter of extrapolating it, right? I mean, it's the article that will tell you all about Kamala Harris, and there's articles about Joe Biden even that you can find on their websites, and they have pretty damning evidence that should tell you like red flags everywhere. Like, this is not a good idea, guys, because anyone can see that Joe Biden is not going to last very long, and that Kamala's going to be the first woman president. And there's so many people that are proud of that, and it's so interesting that like you want a first woman president to be like Tulsi Gabbard, not Kamala Harris.
Yeah, for sure.
She's not a good person. She's very close. She gives me Hillary vibes, lots of Hillary vibes. I don't know if she gives you those vibes, but she,
I think she's less unlikable than Hillary.
less unlikable.
Hillary just there was something
so like a little more likable is what you're saying.
I don't even like saying it like that. That seems more positive.
Okay.
I like the double negative.
Yeah, it threw me off. More she's like minuscule more likable.
Yeah, I think there was like there's just something about Hillary where yeah, I don't even know how to get into that. There's something where like you and I have talked about it. Some of these people, okay, sure, they're war criminals. Sure, they've killed tens of thousands of civilians, including infants and children and women. Okay, but you know what? That aside, I bet W is fun to have a beer with. Whereas, and I bet that like hanging out with Barack over coffee, or shooting hoops, because apparently he's good at that. When he's not blowing up civilians. Like,
oh my goodness.
Like, whereas Hillary, I feel like I would never, ever in my entire fucking life want to talk to that woman. No. And I don't like Kamala, but I don't get that same vibe of like if she were in a room, I would beeline to the other side or just leave that room. Like I did get that feeling with Hillary.
Yeah. On a more personal note, her laugh is terrifying, but
I'm sure that does nothing.
It was a debate. Oh my goodness. Yeah. See, that should tell you so much right there. And so many people just I think people see that. It gives me hope that people see that. It's just the fact that they wanted Trump out so bad. And I think that's really if everything is legitimate, and it turns out that Biden is inaugurated in January. I'm not sure where I was going with this, but the mission accomplished, I guess, on their part. They got Trump out, but I think a lot of people will see that their life's not going to change. The only thing that will change is what they are doing. As Mark Hamill would say, he can now go back to tweeting cat videos instead of tweeting about how terrible Donald Trump is.
Yeah, that bummed me out because for years I felt a kinship with Mr. Hamill because you could tell that his heart was broken by the the absolute disgrace that was the most recent Star Wars trilogy they made. And I felt like, wow, this guy's got a good head on his shoulders. And then I saw that tweet, and I was like, damn it, Mark. But yeah, and it's weird because on one hand, I'm optimistic because you look at Jimmy Dore's most recent interview on Joe Rogan, and it has like 5.2 million views. Like that's viewership that the mainstream media can't compete with anymore. Like clearly, the number of people who see what's going on, the number of those people is increasing. Who realize that this is a sham, that we do not have a democracy. But at the same time, I don't know, while I see people like that online, and I mean, I guess, I have friends like you, so that should be encouraging, but also I talk to so many other people, and they don't have a clue. Like, I had a bonfire at my house. We were socially distanced, but most of the people there voted against Trump and were very excited that he lost. And I was at some point at some point in the conversation. I talked about how Cass and I have an interest in moving out of the country, and I explained that I think things are getting really bad, and I don't think they're going to get any better. I think the police state is just the main point where it turned into like a more heated debate. I said something about how I think the police state is going to get worse and worse. I think the surveillance state is going to get worse and worse. And my friend at the party, who was very, very like Kool-Aid drinking, brain dead Democrat supporter, he said, well, that's what would have happened if Trump had been elected. And I was like, no, it's not going to be any different under Biden.
But people say that, and I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
No, you're fine. I interrupted you too.
People say that, and they're like, well, that's what would have happened if Trump got elected, and he would take away LGBT rights and all these other things. I'm like, guys, he's been in office for 4 years, and if anything, he's expanded all of these rights.
It was probably because of Nancy Pelosi. She did it, not Trump.
Yeah. I mean, but if you look at it, he has done things for minorities that no other president has done, as he would say, even perhaps Abraham Lincoln.
Did he say that? Did he say that?
I think he did at one point. This is how ridiculous the guy is sometimes. But
well, I mean, to be fair, the Democrats were claiming that the totally bogus Russian hijacking of the 2016 election was worse than Pearl Harbor. I mean, it's all sides, but yeah, like, what the fuck, comparing himself to Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah, but that's where I see humor in what he says, and so many people don't. I mean, I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, did this guy just compare himself to Abraham Lincoln? Like, what the hell is wrong with him? And so many other people are like check mark box for that's a lie that Donald Trump has said. I'm like, his lies are not. His lies are so
obnoxious.
Stupid. They're so stupid and obnoxious, and I guess that's what annoys people.
His lies are like when like a 5-year-old lies, and it's
exactly.
Just like
that's it. Yeah.
And you just don't even take it seriously. You're almost kind of like, oh, that's cute. And it's funny, yeah, because this came up at that bonfire too, where my buddy was one of the people that was a little bit more sane and informed at the bonfire was talking about how he just thought Trump was really funny. And one of the other like Kool-Aid drinking Democrat supporters was like, I've never found anything that he said funny. And he was like, and my friend brought up, he's like, seriously? Like the dude's hilarious. And he brought up, I thought, one of the best examples that I hadn't heard of before, which was that Trump was talking about how he wanted to buy some island. It might have been Greenland. I don't know. I didn't look up into it. I got all this secondhand. But he wanted to buy this island, and he tweeted that maybe he'd put he tweeted something about how great it would look with a giant Trump Tower right in the middle. And
Yeah,
that's
I remember
hilarious. That's fucking hilarious. And this Democrat supporter lady was just like, I guess we just have different, senses of humor. I was like, how can you not appreciate the absurdity of the president of the United States doing that? And these people, that's the thing that offends. There's so many things that offend me, but like one of the things that like I just can't help but roll my fucking eyes at is all these people who are like who are like Stephen Colbert crying, and like just all these people talking about how he's disgraced the Oval Office. He's not presidential. And it's like Barack Obama assassinated a 17-year-old American citizen. This isn't Alex Jones tinfoil hat shit. This is public fucking record. And he gaslit the people of Flint when he was there to speak to them.
That was awful. I rewatched that video like last week or
watch the way. So if you just try to find the original media coverage of that event, watch some of like NBC's coverage of what happened. They cut out the bit about him eating lead paint, and they just show you him saying, "I need a drink of water," and I don't know. I mean, granted, the video that Jimmy is showing is a Michael Moore's interviews. It's from one of Michael Moore's movies. So maybe Michael Moore edited it. I haven't watched the unedited footage, but if you watch the NBC footage of what happened, it's totally different. He says he needs a drink of water. You hear people like roaring with applause, and NBC cuts to all of these smiling faces, where Michael Moore showed you all these faces of people in the crowd being appalled.
They were horrified.
Yeah.
That they were being basically told, suck it up. You're just going to have to drink poisoned water.
And if you watch the NBC coverage, they made it out like it was this amazing gesture of solidarity, and like the crowd loved it.
Yeah, that's what
like,
the media.
I felt a flicker of insecurity watching it. I was like, shit, did Jimmy get this way wrong? But I think that they just really disingenuously edited the video.
Yeah, I could dive back into Obama, but and how crazy that man was, but
he's brilliant. He is the I feel like we have two archetypal American politicians right now. There are. I haven't thought about this before. This is just me spontaneously saying this, so this might be dumb, but it just occurred to me that there's somebody like Obama who's very poised and very, very. You can tell that they take the office that they're holding seriously. They take politics seriously, and they seem very intelligent, and they at least pretend to be earnest. And then you have the other major archetype in the sham two-party system, which I would say is best typified by W, or maybe now by Trump, which is this just like W just kind of had this like, hey man, I don't know, like
like the village idiot kind of.
But, let's just hang out, we'll have a few beers and we'll talk this shit out, and then go blow up Iraq, it's no big deal.
Don't talk about that last one though.
And I feel like I don't know, I'd be really curious to go through all of our modern politicians and see how much that holds true, and if I can basically put them all in, broadly speaking, one of these two camps. Because I'd say Trump is more in the Bush camp, where he's so over the top and so silly and ridiculous, where he's kind of asking you not to take him that seriously. He mocks people who take him seriously, actually.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. Which one would you rather have, though, is the question. I mean, do you want someone who we'll use Joe Biden as a better example, actually, because he's been in politics for 47 years. I know the number of years he's been in politics. And he's just had 47 years to perfect the art of selling himself and selling what he's feeding to you, right? Like, he knows how to sell it to you. And it was evident in like the first debate, that the only one that I actually watched, where he's real, and he's talking about how he's got the potato chip, and he's talking about how we need to unify and all these things. He tried to talk about policy. Trump hardly let him because it's Trump. But he tried to talk about his some stuff that he wanted to do. He was very like presidential looking and all that, and that's just what I can't.
I prefer Trump in that regard. If you're going to be, and for all of our 5 listeners, like my ragging on Obama, that wasn't to say that Trump is better, but like, because like Trump drone strike assassinated an 8-year-old American citizen. So like no, yeah, they're cut from the same cloth, but like,
yeah, Trump
makes more explicit the farce that our democracy is, and I think that's I personally find that less offensive. I find masking mass murder with presidential decorum offends me to my core.
Yeah, for sure. I personally couldn't stand Obama. I'm not a Trump fan, for our 5 listeners. I think both Cody and I can agree that like any person in politics right now, you can just see the corruption. Like, it's part of their like aura. It just, you can see that just pretty much everyone in Congress, even if you go in with a good heart, you're not coming out of it with a good one. And
there are a few exceptions. I mean,
there are a few exceptions. I think Tulsi Gabbard is one that I mentioned earlier.
Ron Paul was in the House for decades, and I just watched. I didn't finish it because it was kind of boring. But I watched like half of a speech that Ron Paul gave at the Mises Institute, which to our 5 listeners, they do really great lectures about history and economics. But yeah, his voting record is like perfect. Well, I don't know if it's perfect. I haven't gone through and like examined every one, but like I've never heard anyone bring up anything like, well, Ron, what about that one war that you voted in support of? Like, he was calling for the impeachment of Bill Clinton, not for the Monica Lewinsky bullshit, but for for the wars, using the military in the Kosovo crisis without authorization from Congress. Like, he's been a true blue, stuck to his guns for decades, and listening to him now, he's just as idealistic, and he's just as like cheerful, and like, or he was at the Mises Institute. When you see him doing his daily Liberty report, he's a little more sad and tired, I think, because he's just talking about all this sad shit. But like, seeing him surrounded by, sorry, this is becoming a long tangent, but like, it's cool seeing somebody who was in politics for so long, maintain his convictions for so long, never get bought out, never endorse a piece of legislation or a candidate that he didn't actually believe in. And when he's surrounded by like-minded people, he's still jovial, he's still optimistic, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure. More people like him would be ideal. And this can kind of branch out into so many topics that I think we should try to save for other videos, because we're getting a little long here at this point. I'm not sure if our 5 viewers are going to stick with us. But yeah, I'd be curious to know from those 5 viewers, like, what are your views on this? What do you think that, as far as people, what do you think the number of people are who actually believe that Joe Biden is going to make their life better? I think is
I think
the biggest thing.
a lot of them do.
I
It's
think that's
insane.
the biggest thing I struggle with is how much support is actually for this guy. And I'm okay. I'm come to terms with him being our president. As far as
I've accepted it.
yeah, and I didn't like Trump being our president. But I think all of the accusations against him are wrong. Racist, homophobic, xenophobic. Well, maybe that one a little bit, um, but all those accusations are just hollow. They're baseless, and even like I think I mentioned earlier today, even I looked up some of these things that people claim are why he's racist, and they're not factually backed, such as like his management company in New York City not accepting rent for Black people was the big one. And it turns out that the management company wasn't accepting people that were on welfare, I think was basically the bottom line. And there's people, and unfortunately, there, especially in the 80s when this was going on, Black people were disproportionately on welfare. Lots more Black people than white people were on welfare because of people like Joe Biden. So, it's just so interesting that that's always skewed in such a weird way. But it wasn't like they were looking at Black people and saying, "No, you can't live here because you're Black." It was because of the fact that they were on welfare.
I think
so
that,
that's
I
just
think there are. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, that's just an example of people call him racist, and I can't. I don't see it. I mean, I really don't.
I think there's some legit evidence that he is racist in kind of a callous, superficial way. I think saying that the majority of Mexican immigrants are rapists and thugs. I think that was racist. Saying that pushing the Obama birther conspiracy, the thing where he tweeted out that video with the geriatric white supremacist supporter in the golf cart parade at the retirement. Yeah, when the guy pumped his fist in the air and said "white power" multiple times. And Trump was like, "Oh, I didn't see that part of the video, but it was 8 seconds into it, and it was unmistakable. It was like the focal point of that part of the video." I don't think people are crazy to say that Trump is racist. I think there is enough evidence from various really concerning things that he's said, from the time he was campaigning for the 2016 election. I think there's enough evidence to support allegations that he is racist. My big thing is Joe Biden is provably more racist. Like if you look at
he's put in legislation that is, racist. It disproportionately affects minority communities, Black community,
non-white communities overseas who have had hell raining down from the skies upon them, where sanctions levied against them that led to famine and lack of access to basic medical care. I used to take issue with people saying that Trump is racist. I don't anymore, but I feel like Trump is a big callous jerk, and Biden is actually, in real, tangible, meaningful ways, not just in tweets or really callous remarks, racist remarks. Biden actually passes legislation that devastates non-white communities, both domestically and abroad. So, while I understand anyone who voted against Trump, I don't understand why they voted for Biden. personally.
Yeah, that's well said, for sure. I forget about these Trump actually saying racist stuff, but you're exactly
I
right.
think they've exaggerated it so much because
it is slightly out of context, but he does say these things, and you're just like, oh my god, what the fuck are you doing?
And it's weird because on one hand, the Democrat sympathetic media try to blow those instances so out of proportion that they've literally tried to make people believe that he is like the next Hitler. Like I remember all of my friends on the left in Michigan were devastated when he was elected because they thought we elected a white supremacist. He is not a white supremacist. I haven't seen, or to whatever extent his foreign policy is white supremacist, maybe it's American supremacist. It's no more so than Obama. So I think there's a case to be made that he's racist but not white supremacist. But fuck, what was I saying? I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. What were you saying?
I was just kind of wrapping that up. I think, yeah, it's just a fundamental difference between the things that Trump says and tweets. Can be construed as racist, and in some cases actually are, where you're just like face palming. You're just like, oh my god, this man is our president. What are you doing? And then there's people like Joe Biden who actually pass laws and write bills and pass legislation that is actually racist. And which one would you rather have? For me, I would rather have the guy who just tweets mean tweets. I don't want, and that's just me. I don't want our 5 listeners to think I'm racist, but I would rather someone say that, but then not act on it.
Yeah.
Rather than someone who is silent saying it, but is acting on it. That's way more sinister to me.
Even if Trump was going to act on it, which he appears to have done less so than Biden has throughout his career.
Very short political career, 4 years.
Yeah, even if Trump was going to, because he's so much more easy to spot, I think it's easier to mobilize against it. I think there's something much more dangerous, powerful, and insidious about somebody who is more Machiavellian about it, who pretends to be a progressive while doing all this awful, evil, draconian shit.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And time will tell what he does as president if it remains. We didn't get too much into the fraud aspect of it. That's
a hot potato.
It's sketchy. I mean, come on. You can't look at this whole election and be like, tell Trump that he's an idiot for thinking that it's against him. The whole aspect of it is just so interesting because of all the mail-in stuff and all the COVID and the increased mail-in ballots and all that stuff. Trump was calling it from a very early stage, and I think that's what makes people basically be like, dude, shut up, you lost, like you're done, kind of thing, because they were like, well, Trump has been pushing the fact that there's going to be fraud and there's no evidence of it. But you're telling me that some of this stuff that's happened with all the overnight ballots being counted for Democrats, and
you're telling me that none just stopped counting.
Yeah.
Trump was in the lead. They stopped counting. They come back, and then Biden starts closing the gap.
Yeah. Biden closed. I mean, if you look at Pennsylvania, it was an enormous gap. And all of those. And, of course, I'm inclined to believe it was legitimate until it's proven not legitimate. Right? As I think everyone should be. Everyone should be like, well, it's legit until it's proven not. But to not look into it at all would be foolish. And this kind of goes with my issue with Trump is that his way of asking for recounts is just so egregious. It's so like over the top. It's so, did I use that word right? Egregious. Yeah. It's just very off-putting. And there's certain ways that you can say like, hey guys, you sit there and look at people and be like, hey, this doesn't seem legit. It's a very close race.
Did you see his initial press conference about it? Because I was surprised at how kind of even-tempered and mild-mannered he seemed about it.
I need to go back and watch that.
I haven't watched anything else, but yeah, I think for me, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If you look at the way the media has responded to the whole thing, going into the election, it was they were priming us. They were talking about interference in the election, talking about the Republicans being corrupt and stuff. I think they talked about that, but they
priming us on both sides.
Yeah, right? Yeah, and the fact that the Democratic sympathetic media is going into this, they raised so many doubts about whether this would be a legitimate election. They spent 4 years telling us that the last election was illegitimate, and I saw multiple times people say,
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're okay.
I didn't know who you were. I just saw the title.
Oh, no, yeah, you're good.
Those 5 listeners are very confused right now, but
the fact that as soon as they have a victory, it's oh no, it was legit, and let's not look any further at it. That to me is the most that to me, I think, just at a surface level, is really suspicious.
Yeah, I think that's what I mentioned. I tried to liken it with the Hunter Biden scandal, and the fact that they tried to suppress that tells you that it's true. I mean, in my short 26 years of life, like that, when someone tries to suppress something or suppress a story or make sure that it doesn't get out, that means there's truth to it. And same thing.
I learned a word for that. It's the Barbra Streisand effect.
Is that actually the term for it?
Yeah, because there was a story, I don't know when this was, I think it was in the 90s. Jimmy Dore talked about it in his first interview with Joe. There were journalists who ran a story about this big, opulent mansion that she had bought, and she was really upset about it. And so she made a big stink trying to get the story removed and trying to make sure that nobody found out about it. But she caused such a stink about it that it actually made it a way bigger story. And she made herself look like an ass.
And was it true?
Yeah.
It ended up being true.
Yeah. And with one of the things too, I don't know if you saw this, but on the election night, there were people who were posting screenshots and tweeting about weird anomalies and glitches that they were seeing and how the votes were coming in. The one that I saw was there was one instance where I want to say it was Michigan. I don't know. For our 5 listeners, fact check me on this. But there was one of the states where something like between 100 and 200,000 votes were updated. Every single one was for Biden, 100%. And somebody screenshotted that and posted it to Twitter to call it out and say, what is going on? Twitter took that tweet down. Yeah. And there was a lot of stuff like that. And yeah, that all kind of raises the question, okay, so if there was a computer glitch, if it is just an innocuous mistake, why wouldn't you want people to call that out if you are legitimately interested in a fair election?
For sure. And just if you could lay out the Zach method here, what they should just do is just recount. I mean, audit and recount all these states. Who gives a shit how long it takes? I know people, but that's the thing, is that that kind of just shows you the media doesn't want, they are an agent of chaos in this situation. And
absolutely.
They called this election way early on. What they needed to do was just say, no one call it. We're gonna look into all these states. We're gonna wait for Nevada. They might have counted by next year their votes, and all these states where they're extremely close, like Arizona and Pennsylvania, Georgia.
Me and my roommate were joking. Nevada, prostitution's legal there, so it must be like they count 100 votes and they're like, hey, let's take a break.
Yeah. But it seems like such an obvious answer that civilized human beings can arrive at, and for people like me and you, it just blares red flags. And for people that buy into the media bias and all that stuff, it blares, Trump is a dictator, and it just blares different things to different people. And it's tough for me to understand. And I think that's my goal, and kind of this whole podcast that we're making, is try to, true north is what we're trying to find. And I do want to understand like where a lot of these people are coming from, because I think it's essential. It's essential in being able to beat the system someday.
I feel bad for them, because I think these people are victims of brainwashing. If they actually knew as much as not to sound like I'm self-aggrandizing or being pretentious, but like you and I have started to drink from the well of uncommon knowledge, drink from the well of prohibited knowledge, even. And I think most people, if they knew the same stuff that we did, I think that they would either come to similar conclusions, or if not, at least come to similar conclusions, they would be far more open-minded about all of this. But most people live in this very, it's not just that the information that they receive is tightly controlled, it's that the stakes, the social and even perhaps the professional stakes for getting information from outside of that bubble are very high. You really have, I mean, think about how nervous or embarrassed you felt at first when you first started to, for lack of a better word, unplug, talking about any of this stuff. Think about how awkward you probably felt the first few times that you brought up any of this stuff with somebody that you didn't already know was sympathetic to that perspective. Mm-hmm. People, and both sides of the aisle will attack you. They'll call you. A lot of my friends on the left will call me a conspiracy theorist. I've just been called an Obama hater. I've had people on the right tell me that I'm some crazy, overly idealistic hippie. Like you are, most of those are actually fairly benign compared to some of the. I mean, I think one of the worst things that you get called is a conspiracy theorist, even if you're talking about things that are public record, provable fact. It's if you stop believing in the mainstream narrative, if you start to talk about how both sides are lying to the American people 24/7, you are so intensely ostracized. People stop taking you seriously. You're out of the club of, hey, we're all reasonable adults with acceptable opinions. And it's lonely. If I didn't have friends in my life like you that I could talk to about this stuff, which for a while I didn't, and it's really hard to deal with. So not only is the information that they're getting so tightly controlled, and so intentionally polarizing, but it's so melodramatic, and the consequences of not believing it, the consequences of realizing that these people are lying to you, realizing that they've been lying to you about almost everything. The social consequences are so great, and yet also there's a death that occurs inside of you when you realize, like if my father realized that most of what he believes to be true about World War II is false. If he learned that, oh, actually the USSR did more to defeat the Nazis than the US, and oh, actually there was no good reason for us to drop the bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were totally superfluous, Japan had already issued a conditional surrender, it would crush him, because that's his whole reason for loving the country that he's from, for taking pride in his nationality, and for believing that our country is a force for good in the world. And I think a lot of people are like that. Like, for a lot of people, their World War II is Obama or something like that. And to realize that the government, and I don't just mean the government like the way that libertarians talk about it. I mean like the kind of mushy swamp of corporate special interests and lobbyists and government, like this entire mob of people are basically a criminal organization, and they fund themselves with your tax dollars and brainwash you to think that they're the greatest, most idealistic government in the history of mankind. It's sad. A part of you dies. You have to be reborn and totally recontextualize your place in the world. And yeah, sorry, that was a really long-winded explanation, but it's so easy to get angry with people for being so fucking ignorant, and being so blindly hateful and blindly trusting, blindly hateful to anyone who thinks differently than them. I mean, but I really try to remind myself of how painful it was for me to unplug, and how much social ostracization, how the fuck do you even say that word? Ostracization I went through when I started to think differently. And I just feel bad for them. When I think about the people who in 2016, like I was friends with them, like I saw their Facebook feeds, they were devastated that Trump was elected. And I think the media is actually hijacking these people's emotional health.
Yeah.
And their sanity, their intellectual soundness.
Yeah. Well, that was it was a long way to get there, but
sorry about that.
No, that was perfect. I think your last point hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's what they're doing, and I think it's getting less lonely where we're at. And
I agree.
I think that more people are becoming like me and you, or more, especially our generation. I think,
and Generation Z, from what I've seen.
More of us, for sure, Generation Z. More of us are okay with getting our belief system shattered because it wasn't very strong to begin with. But and then the generation older than us, it's much more difficult. And I think things are looking up now. The problem is figuring out how to fix it, and we're gonna have to think more on that one before our next, because I think that would be a great topic.
I don't know
theorizing how to fix these things, right?
The only step that, like Jordan Peterson says, clean up your room and then you'll know what to do next. For me in all of this, like, it was like, okay, what's the first step that I know that I can take? I can educate myself so that I can and then I can try to dispel the mythology of the war machine.
So you have all these people who are, say you have, how many people voted for Trump in this last election?
Some are a little over 70 million.
70 million. So say you end up with 50 million people who educate themselves, or no. So 140 people approximately voted total, right? So say you end up with 100 million people who educated themselves. They know that the two parties are completely a farce. They're done with the two-party system. And then the election rolls around, and guess who the candidates are? The Republican candidate and the Democratic candidate. And then you're just facing, like, how do you break that cycle is, I think, the key part that we need to look at is how do we, not even a third party. It's just like no one should have any party. It should be people who are running on especially for president, but really it starts at your local elections.
What makes you think that we can change it at this point?
I'm not confident we can, but I think, like I was saying, I think what you were saying is correct. I think, getting an astronomical number of people to get on the same page, and not like you have to have the same belief system that me and you have. I mean, we're a little hippie-ish with socialized healthcare and whatnot. You don't even have to be on that page. Just be on the same page of like the government is screwing you over. And once people sort of like come to realize that Joe Biden's screwing you over, Trump screwed you over, Obama screwed you over, Bush, you can go back way far. Like, once you kind of realize that, I think we'll start to see maybe some resemblance of an idea. I think me and you can come up with one if we are given enough time as to what the next step might be. But
I have heard it said, that, it's like, do you remember the movie A Bug's Life?
Mm-hmm. I watched a little bit of it the other day.
Oh, cool. The part where Hopper grabs the pellet of corn and hits the other grasshopper on the head with it, and then takes the cork out, and he's like, those ants outnumber us, however many to one.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard a similar argument. I think it might have been in a Mises Institute lecture. I don't know, but the power of the governed is always in the mind. Sorry, the power of those who govern is always abdicated to them in the minds of those who are governed, because those who are governed always greatly outnumber those who govern. So if that is true, then perhaps if you can change the way enough people think, you can actually stop it. You can actually reform it. Part of me is very, very pessimistic. I do think that the people who, whether it's the oligarchs or the government or the deep state, whoever the fuck it is, I think that they know that that's coming. I think they know that they're losing control. And I think that they're preparing for it. I think that they're trying to automate the police state, and I think that they're trying to get through censorship laws in as many different ways as they can to try to maintain their grip on the way that we think. And it's scary because it seems, especially like, we're at the hockey stick. We're past the point of inflection on the hockey stick graph of technological improvement, and the way that that's enhanced our government's way to control society, both through the police and through the military. It all is scary, and it makes me pessimistic. But then, on another hand, part of me thinks that maybe that's cowardly, because I'm sure that there were people who felt very similarly to the way that we do in the USSR or in Nazi Germany, and who thought, how are we ever going to overthrow this? It's such a massive system that's so well funded and has, Gestapo or SS guards and secret prisons and surveillance systems. But both of those organizations collapsed. So maybe it's not too late. Maybe it's never too late. But God, it's gonna suck.
It is gonna suck.
Trying to reform it.
Yeah, it's gonna collapse at some point. And it's just a matter of how it does it, I guess. And I think it's essential that, the people, the ants, to use your metaphor, I think it's essential that we have a way to do it. Otherwise, we're just going to kind of maintain the course, right? And hopefully between me and you and our 5 viewers, we can...
God bless you all.
We can try to come up with something. Yeah, you've had to deal with us for an hour and 45 minutes, so maybe we could break this up into clips or something.
It's probably down to like 3 viewers, maybe just one person, and that person's only still listening because he fell asleep.
Yeah, or he he went away and forgot to hit pause. But I think, yeah, we'll wrap it up. But I think the way that we do it is to educate ourselves and then kind of from there figure out a way to eradicate the corruption that's in the government. It's almost impossible at this point, but I think not completely impossible.
I think so. I don't remember if did I tell you about the interview between Eric Weinstein and Lex Friedman?
I watched a little bit of it. Yeah.
Did you see the part where Lex was talking about how encouraged he was by Joe Rogan's popularity, and he and Eric were debating it?
So Lex was encouraged. What did Eric say in response? Do you know?
Eric said, basically, Eric loves Joe. You know, they're good friends, and he's so happy for Joe, and he thinks what Joe is doing is great. But he told Lex, because Lex was saying Joe needs to do something. He needs to, like, he's got this power now, and he can actually, like, help guide our society towards a better future. And Eric just wouldn't have it. Eric said, no, the moment that Joe actually tries to do something politically meaningful with his platform, he'll be shut down. They'll take him out. Exactly. They'll either attack him directly or they will attack the people closest to him. And whether that's through the physical violence of the state, you know, if Joey Diaz gets arraigned by the DEA, or whether it's through character assassinations in the media or whatever, the oligarchs will come down on him full force. And it was sad because you could see that there was still this hopeful, optimistic idealism in Lex, and there was this. You could see in Eric that he once thought the way that Lex did, and he wished that he could still think that way, but that he was convinced that it was hopeless. And I relate a lot more with Eric's perspective than Lex's. I mean, just even, I think we kind of lost everything in the 60s, honestly. I think that was the last moment where we were really shaking things up and pushing for real, meaningful reforms to our government and to our economy and to our culture. And I think it's like in that System of a Down song where it says, following the rights movements, you crack down with your iron fist. Drugs became conveniently available to all the kids. I think that kind of hits the nail on the head. I think they realized, like, oh shit, like the people actually have power. We can't outright oppress that power out of them, because then they will revolt, and there's nothing we can do if we're dead in the water if they actually outright revolt. How can we castrate their power? And I think they've done that so successfully that I don't. And the people. Sorry, there's like a graveyard of ideas that I've meant to follow through with in this podcast, and then like let them fall off the wagon. But
it's supposed to be about the election.
if you look at the people who were actually leading change in the 60s, the people who were really spouting revolutionary ideas, even JFK, who was calling for an end to the Cold War, who was saying that the U.S. and the USSR should be peaceful competitors, they all ended up with bullets in their head. You know, whether it's JFK or MLK or X or RFK or Fred Hampton, they were all gunned down. And none of the leaders that we've been given since then have been nearly as revolutionary. They've all been duplicitous hacks. Mm-hmm. And to me, and the people in the last 20 years that I know of, or the last 10 to 15 years, I guess, who've tried to be revolutionary in smaller ways, like Barrett Brown. He was a journalist. He was the journalist who revealed that the banks work with private intelligence firms like CrowdStrike, which was the private intelligence firm that made all the material that was used to back up the Russiagate claims. Or Stratcor, like there's a cabal of private intelligence firms, and the big banks like Bank of America or Wells Fargo contract with these groups to undermine protest groups like Occupy Wall Street. He revealed that in his reporting. The FBI broke into his apartment, beat him up. He was in a web chat too. Like you can see the video of it on YouTube. They broke into his apartment, beat him up, took his laptop, and threw him in prison for several years. And you and I both know what's happening to Julian Assange. Aaron Swartz, just for publishing some research archives from MIT, he just published them so that they would be publicly available. In his mind, they were funded by taxpayer dollars, so they should be freely available to the public. What he did was technically illegal, but MIT said that it wasn't going to press charges. I think it was the FBI, whatever agency of the government was in charge of it, though, wanted to make an example of him. So they were pushing to throw him in prison for 30 years. And he committed suicide because under the pressure of that. Like,
wow.
And Chelsea Manning, having spent, most of the last 10 years in prison and having been tortured, all the whistleblowers under the Obama administration who were prosecuted as spies under the Espionage Act. Like, I feel like all the tall nails get beaten down. And while there are rare examples of people who've made it into the belly of the beast and are trying to affect change, like Ron Paul or like Tulsi Gabbard, they're basically they're one drop of distilled water and like a river of shit. And then to whatever extent that I think they're rendered useless by their colleagues in Congress who will basically ignore all their appeals to better reason. And then they're also almost invariably snipes by the media, character assassinations. Whether it's calling Tulsi Gabbard an Assad apologist or whether it's calling Ron Paul a racist, or just saying that he's crazy. They're constantly delegitimized so that even their ability to change the way that people think is severely handicapped. So I don't know. I'm pretty pessimistic.
Yeah.
I think it'll collapse under its own weight eventually.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that gives me an oddly optimistic view. I think, where I'm not looking forward to that time, and it might not even happen in our lifetime. I mean, it could take 100 more years to fully disintegrate and collapse. Or it could happen in the next 5 to 10. I have no idea. I loved
that article you sent me, by the way. That was fascinating.
Yeah, I do want to get into that for sure. I'm trying to keep this fairly short for our last lingering viewer, but
I decided to just let it go.
That's fair.
Watching. I watched most of Jimmy Dore's first interview with Joe, and I don't know. It'll become whatever it becomes. I feel like this is. I guess we don't need to discuss this in the podcast, but my attitude about it has kind of evolved to, I just love talking to you, and we talk about whatever we talk about, and we'll talk about whatever we talk about, and we can have episodes that are themed one way or another, but I don't know. I talk in tangents. I talk in digressions. So.
Oh yeah, and I feel like the other topics will tangent into each other. Like if you watch this podcast and then you watch the next one, like there's going to be so many topics that meet together. You're like, didn't they talk about this? Like,
well, and I think
last podcast.
I think some of the stuff too, because our goal is to unplug people.
Yeah.
Our goal is to help people see the code of the matrix. And what I've gotten from some of the different long form podcasts that I've listened to or interviews that I've listened to, sometimes they just drop random ass references left and right, like to Project Mockingbird, which was a CIA program to infiltrate the media, or Operation Northwoods, or the Iran-Contra affair. Like, there's all these different things that just come up, and the people who are interested in talking about the stuff that we're interested in talking about usually talk in this webbed pattern where each thought kind of expands out into all these other different side conversations, and I think that's kind of part of the medium. I don't think that you can talk for 2 hours and be like, all right, this is what we're talking about. And maybe we should we can rein it in more later, but part of me almost wonders too if part of the medium is the informalness of it.
I think that's what gets Joe Rogan so many viewers.
Yeah.
If you look at, like, he has a guest and there's no topic. I mean, it's just,
hey, how are you?
Yeah, exactly. He starts off with a how are you? Starts talking about like anywhere from cars to, I don't know. It's just incredible. He just kind of comes up with random shit and it just sticks. And then they end up talking for 3 hours about it. It's crazy.
I miss his old intro.
Freak bitches.
Yeah.
Hello,
freak bitches. That was so good. The new one's more professional seeming.
It is.
I get why he changed it, but I felt like with the old one, at least he kept the logo. Like, good on him for doing that. And
I like the logo.
Yeah, but there was something so delightfully silly and dissident about that. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I guess I'm good to wrap this up. Maybe even edit out the last bit where we're talking about how we should conduct. I don't care.
Yeah, we'll keep it in. But
yeah, our 5 listeners, if you agree with our strategy, if you have comments, fucking put them in.
Engage with us. That's how we grow. So
yeah. Smash the like button.
Yeah, exactly. Get us. I mean, I don't think a 2-hour podcast is going to go viral, but I think we should split it up into clips and just see.
I was thinking about that while
have
we were talking.
Have the whole thing uploaded and then split up into clips.
I was cringing as we were talking, realizing that I have to go back in order to split it up into clips. I have to go back and listen to myself talk,
that's the worst part. Honestly, if anything kept me from doing this in the past, it would be the fact that I have to listen to my own voice, and it's terrifying.
Well, and this is even worse because you also have to you kind of have to watch your face too. So like I have a lot of like weird physical tics and stuff, and the last time I actually spent time watching myself on video, I think I was a teenager, because it just made me uncomfortable. And ever since then, I was just like, nope, don't need that in my life.
Yeah, I think videoing myself is fine. It's the voice for sure. I've had a lot of ideas that are, like podcast, video related, vlog related, whatever. And I'm just like, you have to get over that, right? And that's just how you start it. So hopefully no one like hates my voice too much other than myself. So
I do, but I'm getting through it.
You're too nice. Yeah. You're too nice to say anything.
It is funny. Like let's end this. Hey everybody, thanks for listening, and tune in next week. Did you want to say anything?
No, sorry. I completely froze there. Yeah. Thanks for tuning into the first one, guys. We'll be a little more prepared. We'll get better as we go, as with everything. And once again, the main purpose is to find some sort of true north in all this, right? So I hope as we grow and continue to hopefully get more followers, more listeners, that we can help enact this change that we have been talking about for the last 2 hours. So yeah, we can go ahead and end it. So it was a good one, and see you guys next time.
Peace.